Hello internet friend and welcome to Pop Commentary, where we seriously dissect TV shows and movies through the help of memes. My name is Laziga and I'm super happy that you're alive today. Let's get started. This is a new delayed release from the year 2020, originally set to premiere sometime around April, but put into pandemonium purgatory until Christmas Day. So I want to talk about Promising Young Woman. Now, to watch Promising Young Woman, especially as someone from the target audience, is a lot.
Why do men, why do they, why do they breathe?
No. So early content warning, if you're not familiar with this film, Promising Young Woman, written and directed by Emerald Fennell, tackles the issues of sexual assault and rape culture. And since it is a really sensitive topic, and if you're interested in wanting to see it, I'd say as far as that viewing experience goes, that the film does not get that much more graphic as what you see in some of the trailer scenes. So if you've watched the couple trailers, that's about as bad as it gets for a majority of its runtime until about like the very end. The story centers around Cassie, Cassandra Thomas, played by Carey Mulligan, our favorite Doctor Who guest star, and her journey as she goes on this quest for revenge. Cassie's thing is that she goes out every night, pretends to be drunk, and then when a nice guy tries and takes her home, she lets him know just how not nice he really is. And honestly, I love that for her.
I know that's right.
One of the things that motivates Cassie is her grief and her anger towards what happened to her best friend Nina, who is never seen on screen. But things start to change for Cassie as she reconnects with a college friend Ryan, and now she kind of gets into this position of, does she continue to go on her revenge quest, or does she try and live a normal life and potentially see where this relationship goes? This movie is a dark comedy, and that's definitely one of my favorite genres of movies, so I really loved it. I think the humor was really clever. The way things were shot was just super beautiful, and the cast just does a really great job bringing Emerald Fennell's idea to life. It was really cool to see within this film just how distinct the female gaze is with how things were shot, how characters were portrayed, and there's a lot of women involved within the background scenes. Of course, this was written and directed by Fennell, and Carey Mulligan also took on an executive producer role, and our favorite Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie, took on a producer role in this film as well. I think the story is really interesting. Like I said, written by Fennell, this is an original story, so in an entertainment field filled with a bunch of reboots and franchises, it's just really refreshing to hear a different voice and to see a totally new story on screen. And Bo Burnham does an awesome job with his part. He ad-libbed a bunch of his lines, and I feel like it makes everything really believable and just charming whenever he and Carrie are interacting on screen. So the story in this movie really keeps you guessing. It keeps turning and pivoting, and I feel like that's a really big triumph. You just never really know what's going to happen. You think you do, and then it surprises you. And I have to say, the last 10-15 minutes of the movie might make or break whether or not you love it or hate it. And I think that's still a really good thing to have as far as tell a story that does have that polarizing effect and make it be like, okay, you have to have an opinion on this one way or another. Fennell does a great job of kind of just subverting the audience expectations and also just showing us a new world. And I feel like I really like just the characters she introduced, the dynamics that she put on screen. So I personally did like the ending. I totally understand if people do not. And now I thought it'd be awesome to go and do a character study on the main character, Cassie, and along with that kind of explain a bit of the ending and why I think it fits perfectly for the story that Fennell was telling. So this is your spoiler warning. I highly recommend that you do watch the film. It's now available for streaming, and it's still in theaters if you have the possibility to go out and see the movie. But otherwise, and if you're just curious about hearing me analyze this film, keep watching. Okay, so now let's get into the character analysis of Cassie, our main protagonist. I've tried very hard to get into the mind of Cassie, finding this pink flowery dress, which I think she would definitely rock. She wore a ton of different flower dresses and shirts throughout the film, and giving myself a little pastel pink manicure. which is Cassie's signature look, which we'll get into that a little bit later. So Cassie, as our main protagonist, I feel her character is better understood as more of an allegory than she is a real person. Now Cassie, she spends the entire film kind of hiding her emotions. She is really hurt and still wounded by what happened to her friend, but she puts on a facade and she puts on an act throughout most of the film's runtime. So she's either acting at the bars, pretending to be drunk so that she can go punish these men, or she's at home or at work and she's kind of just pretending that life is normal and nobody in her personal private life is even aware of her other revenge hobbies in the slightest. So Cassie kind of lives in these two different dynamics of never really showing her true self to people, and it's kind of just like you and as the audience member, you're the only person who really knows Cassie. I think Cassie is more of an allegory for all the frustrations and anxieties that women may have about issues of sexual assault and abuse in culture. And at the same time, Cassie is above it all, and her quest for vengeance, it's like her sole motivator and what drives her. And so in a way, she becomes this sort of goddess person who she's able to seek revenge. She's able to do things that the rest of us wouldn't, just to make sure that people know, hey, your behavior is wrong and I'm calling you out for it. Period. Now let's look at her character through the lens. Literally, let's talk framing. Let me start by showing you my favorite frame throughout the entire film. I just love this image of Cassie. Like I said, kind of, she reminds me of not really being a full, just a human character, but also superseding that. So having her in the center of this frame, she looks like she could be one of those ancient Michelangelo depictions of a deity of some sort. So she looks like a goddess in this frame, and I just love it. Now, seeing how a character is introduced in the film can tell us a lot about them. And we go back to the start of the film, Cassie is actually introduced to us off screen. There's a group of men at a bar just talking, and then they start talking about her as they notice her across the way. And then we see her, that one shot that's in all the trailers, her apparently super drunk, passed out almost at the bar. And so that really kind of displays everything that you need to know about her character and her trajectory throughout the film. And spoiler, the film also ends the way it begins, as Cassie with her arms spread out, head, face kind of concealed. Her face is kind of concealed in the start with her hair. Her face is completely concealed at the end. And once again, before the movie is even fully over, Cassie is off screen and just another character that we're talking about. And again, no longer within the film as far as what we can see of her. So I think Fennell really did that like out of the park, just the way it begins and ends the same. And you can kind of see right from the get-go, okay, this is Cassie, this is her trajectory. She's someone we will follow as an audience member, but where her character is going is nowhere good, sadly. And I feel like that it's sad to like get so much time with a character only to lose them in the end. But when it's done so well, like how Fennell did it here, I like can't even be angry. It's like it was just so well done. You just have to give her props for that. Give it up.
She's got a point. She's an icon. She's a legend, and she is the moment. Now, come on now.
And also within the first few scenes is where you get to really see the difference that the female gaze makes in this type of storytelling versus the male gaze. Oftentimes, even in like shows or movies that do talk about issues of sexual assault, they still use the male gaze when showing potential victims on screen. But Fennell really does a good job of not going for those classic close-up shots as to what the men are seeing when they look at her, but we're getting more of a third-person perspective, and we're seeing Cassie as someone else who is at the bar who doesn't have those intentions of taking advantage of her. And she's dressed very modestly here, and you see in the frame just kind of like, okay, she looks like she's not well, she looks like she needs help. And then so seeing how the other characters interact with her, seeing them pull her along and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't look at any point romantic what they're doing. And I feel like that's like a really big triumph and kind of course, like the major goal of what Fennell's doing with this film. Like, it's not romantic getting picked up from a bar when you're practically asleep like Cassie is. There's no element of that being something cute or that she's connecting with the guys at all. She barely says anything, hardly does anything, and they all just go ahead with what they think their nice guy antics should be in this scenario. Now, Carey Mulligan is beautiful, of course, but again with this film, instead of using the close-up shots for something that we would typically be used to, like glamour shots, I feel like a lot of the close-up shots were just moments for Carey Mulligan to act her ass off, okay? Everything that was like close-up with her eyes just gives you so much emotion, so much feeling, right into that moment that's in the trailers as well, when she opens her eyes again and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, she's sober. And the look she gives to that nice guy who had been helping her get home from the bar, death, okay, it ended him. So it's just amazing to see how, yeah, they use a lot of these close-up shots of her to just kind of to reveal her mindset, since the movie is about her, but it doesn't have any internal dialogue. It just is really focused on the acting of seeing, okay, what is she thinking in this moment? What can we see in her face? And you just really get a lot of that. And so Cassie either has her poker face on or she has her revenge face on. And then you get these more quieter moments and frames where you can kind of see, okay, this is Cassie, the real Cassie, having an emotional moment. And some of the other framing devices that they use is they put Cassie within 2 frames. So a frame within a frame. And when they do that, it's mostly when she's at home. And so typically you'd be like, okay, Cassie's at home. This is where she should feel the most natural. She should be the most herself in the privacy of her own home. But they use a lot of different like framing devices, which I think is to signify how even within this universe, Cassie isn't very connected to her own personal life. She isn't really connected to her parents. They have no clue what she's doing. And she isn't even connected to herself. And so the scene that you have of her in her bedroom, and she kind of looks up to the picture of Nina. And so it's a frame of her staring into a picture, but also you're seeing her in the mirror. So I feel like that's like a frame within a frame of you're seeing her face not directly, but like within another lens, with another mirror, I guess. And you see just that interaction that she has, and it's kind of just chilling. And this is where we should be most at comfortable, where she's being the most vulnerable, and it's just kind of scary. And just seeing how they did all those framing devices have to make you realize who Cassie is. Like, Cassie is not just playing a game when she's out at the clubs. She's also, in a way, very much secluded within her own emotions and of never really letting out how she feels in a healthy way. And one of the last frames I think is really important to talk about, of course, is within her part 3 of her 5-part revenge plan, when she goes to talk to the lawyer, and she sits on the couch and she's center framed, and on either side of her are dead plants. So a bit of a red flag to the fact that Cassie isn't going to survive this movie. And it's really well done, and with that scene it's really interesting because you see her do all these other revenge plans and everything works out, but this one revenge plan doesn't go as planned. Gosh, I just said planned so many times. Yeah, this one revenge plot doesn't go the way she expects it to. And so instead of the lawyer being unrepentant, he feels sorry, he feels bad. And in a way, you would think that we're supposed to be happy. Like, shouldn't we be so happy that this guy, he gets it. He gets that what he did was wrong. But instead, Cassie kind of just looks a bit horrified, a bit lost, like she doesn't know what to do now that she's actually found someone who is willing to listen to her, somebody who believes her when she says what happened was wrong. And I feel like that's kind of another signifier that Cassie isn't much without her revenge plan. Without seeking revenge, she doesn't really know where she's going. She doesn't really have direction in life. And so it's after that scene, of course, Cassie then changes her trajectory. She starts to pursue dating Ryan seriously. And then we come back closer towards the end of the film. We have another scene where Cassie is sitting center framed on a couch, this time at her parents' home. Weird ghost decorations around her from her mom. And in a similar way, after that conversation and that scene with Cassie on the couch, she changes trajectories again. Whereas the first time you see her go, okay, I'm going to abandon my revenge quest and try and live a normal life. After this one, we see Cassie goes, okay, this is it. Forget normal life, straight revenge. That's it, all the way to the end. So I really love how, yeah, Fennell does a lot of that mirroring from scenes at the start to scenes at the end, where you can kind of see frame by frame kind of how Cassie is progressing. And it really, if you're like paying attention to that kind of stuff, you can see where the things are going. And I just love that about the framing in this film. Now, like I've already alluded to, Cassie said revenge, but make it cute. I love the wardrobes of Promising Young Women. Like, if this wasn't a dark comedy about sexual assault, this would be like the cultural reset, I feel like, for fashion. It has like, the way Clueless just has all those amazing like looks and everybody's like wants to emulate that even decades on. I just loved all the looks within Promising Young Women. Basically, it's just super like, Cassie's just super fashionable. And in interviews, Fennell kind of talked about her purpose within having the wardrobe be what it is. It was important to Fennell that Cassie gets picked up at the bar in multiple different outfits. Like in the first scene, she's dressed up very modestly. She's dressed up like a business professional and gets picked up by a nice guy business professional. And it's kind of just a display with all the different outfits, whether they're flashy, whether they're modest. It doesn't matter at all what she was wearing. To the predatory men who approach her, all that they're looking at is not the wardrobe, it's at the opportunity. Is there an opportunity here to exploit her? So I really feel like that's really awesome that Fennell made that like a big priority for her, just to make it clear, like, it does not matter what she was wearing. And all that mattered was that she was there and there was an opportunity. And Fennell also made an interesting point too for Cassie as a character who still dresses up when she's in her personal life, but she's also using that as part of her disguise. Now society kind of has these like ideas where if a woman is wearing maybe all gray, all black, and is like has her hair up in a bun and not wearing makeup, then it's like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Are you upset? And they worry about you. But if you're dressed nicely, wearing cute clothes, your nails are done, that doesn't set off any red flags. It doesn't make people think they should be concerned right away. And I know, of course, like, I love me some athleisure, but like the way Fennell described it in the interview just made me think, like, yeah, the way that she dresses doesn't make you think that her mental state is as bad as it really is. And in a way, she's able to kind of hide for a very long time to those around her what's going on. No one ever finds out really that she's still so very upset about what happened to Nina. Everyone thinks that she's moved on and she's just living her life. And it's only her parents who see her every day that are aware that she's not doing much with her life. I mean, a millennial living at home with her parents couldn't be me, wouldn't be me.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
So Cassie goes through all these different looks when she's going to the bars and clubs to kind of just blend in with the crowd. But when she goes on a revenge quest with her med school former classmates, she dresses up. Like, the looks, the dresses, the pantsuits, phenomenal. And then when she's doing other normal things, it's still, her wardrobe is very pink, very flowers, very colorful. It's kind of hard to pin down even a direct color coding with her, besides kind of like the pink, maybe the stereotypical feminine colors, red, and all those kind of fuzzy things. And especially within like her childhood home, there's a lot of pink and fluffiness going on around there. But then you get to see Cassie with her boyfriend in the movie, Ryan. And Ryan, his wardrobe is kind of, plain. He wears a lot of blues. And as their relationship progresses, Cassie kind of goes from wearing her bright pinks and magentas to wearing more pale pastel blues that kind of match and mirror him. Even like her final dress within her relationship is a nice little pale baby blue. And it just kind of shows kind of that, intentionality of seeing her character kind of commit to being more human, but even within that commitment, she's still kind of mimicking and putting on a show. So she can only really be human when she's copying something from someone else, doing things that make sense in the context of what other people think. So it's kind of rare that Cassie makes decisions or dresses in a way that you feel like, is she really like expressing herself right now? So I feel like that's really interesting. Like the whole time, like, yeah, Cassie is a character within a character, just hiding how she feels about everything going on. In many interviews, Fennell's explained the intentionality around having Cassie's wardrobe be super feminine. She wanted it to be super cutesy, just all the things that maybe sometimes even get denigrated in these genres of movies. When you look at the different female characters that have come out that have been pushed or portrayed as like a strong, independent female character, a lot of times you get into these situations where it's like, is this even a female character or is this a male character that just so happens to be played by a female? In a lot of ways, sometimes that strong female, independent female character is stripped of many of the things that typically feminine women enjoy, whether it's having nicely done hair, having your nails done. It's like you have to be so laid back to be strong and to be independent, which is not true at all. And so Fennell really wanted to lean into that and to show, again, like Legally Blonde-esque, hey, you can be a strong, independent female character and still like typically female things. And the other thing of Cassie's wardrobe that's really important, because like I said, a lot of her costumes, a lot of her wardrobe is kind of exists for other people. But one thing that I think Cassie does that she really is consistent with her character that she does for herself is her nails. She has them done in this like lovely little pastel array of different colors. And like doing my nails like this in preparation just made me think about like being a kid, how you'd want to like put on all the different colors. And I feel like it really displays like the sense of playfulness of Cassie and how she's holding on to her youth and holding on to her childhood best friend. And it also just kind of shows that her mental state is still kind of regressed in that she's not willing to let that go right up until the end. And in the end, her last outfit is the white nurse's outfit, which is a nod to her med school dropout days. And she pairs it with this white rainbow wig, which I think goes back down to the authenticness of her and her nails and how she is still holding on to the past, and that's her biggest motivator. And the things that she lost with losing her childhood best friend, which is really painful, and how her way of holding on to that with wearing Nina's heart necklace all the time, right down to having her nails, kind of shows you like this is a character who's kind of stuck and you never get to see that transformation. Does she fully step away from this goal of revenge? It just never happens for her. But it's just beautiful to see still that she puts all that effort into making the character super intentional, right down to the nails. Last thing about Cassie that I wanted to explain is her ending and kind of her big revenge plot. So my theory is that her revenge plan, which we never get to see written out, but we get signifiers that there are 5 phases to it. And in the end, all the loose ends get like tied up really neatly, and you see that Cassie had already sent the evidence of the crime to the lawyer and had made sure that he would alert the police, and she already sent the necklace to her boss at the coffee shop. So there was all these things that were in place before Cassie dies. That makes you realize that even though her death appears to be within the film a tragic accident, it could very much well be intentional, and I think it was. You find out kind of after Cassie's interaction with the lawyer that she feels very personally guilty about what happened to Nina. Like, she doesn't only blame her friends and, of course, the man who assaulted her friend. She blames everybody who was at that party, but she also blames herself for not being there and not going to the party with Nina like they would have normally gone to events together. And so with all these revenge plans that she has going back to the past and kind of making all the people who contributed in some way to Nina getting hurt pay for it. I think the fourth part of the revenge plan was for her to disappear. Cassie in Promising Young Woman does what Amy in Gone Girl couldn't do. She commits completely to her revenge plan. She does some odd things right before she goes into Nick's bachelorette party. The way she kind of tosses her car keys, she tosses her license plates, which you would think you wouldn't want to do that necessarily, just in case things go wrong and the police can identify your car and be okay with it. So my theory is that like the fourth revenge plan was for Cassie to in some way disappear, if not dying while attempting to hurt Nick, which is what happened, then to be able to somehow hurt Nick and then escape in her car and maybe assume a new identity somewhere else. But I'm pretty sure that her plan in that fourth phase was to pull a Gone Girl and disappear after that bachelorette party night. And so one of the things that come after, with the lawyer of course getting the information that he needs to contact the police, and then at the actual wedding, how Ryan gets all these text messages sent Pretty Little Liars style. And let me tell you, it still makes no sense to me. Like from then and the mid-early 2000s to like now, how A sent the messages that were sent on a timer. Very sus to me still.
Surprise, bitch. I bet you thought you'd seen the last of me.
But Cassie somehow taps into that A text messaging system and sends Ryan text messages posthumously that kind of reveal, hey, this was all part of the plan. You enjoying the wedding? Winky face. And so I'm like, okay, this was all part of the plan. And so I think from the get-go, Cassie was kind of planning to do the most extreme thing possible to get and make sure that Nick and his friends paid for what they did to Cassie. And with things like sexual assault, they might be like legal limits as to like how many years you can even have before you can like the case is just done for, you can't get any more justice out of it. So even though like that recording that she got ended up being like, hey, new evidence, that definitely could trigger a new court case, that's still no guarantee. So I think Cassie's plan all along was to kind of see if she could get them caught with like a new crime. And so in the end, she does satisfy all those requirements that she had within herself and her own sense of justice. And you just realize like her sense of justice supersedes her sense of self. It is all that defines her. And just the fact that she wasn't there at that party, that she didn't do her part, I think she really wanted to make sure that was paid for in some way. And she sadly did by making sure that she died so that Nina's abusers would be sent to prison for good. And so Cassie lives up to her own allegory by sacrificing herself for the sake of justice. In a way, Cassie is the dragon slayer, and all these predatory men are literal monsters, scum. And in the end, Cassie slays them. We love to see it. The sun is setting, but I still have some problems with this movie. I figure I might as well get out here. One of my major problems with this movie is just the fact that it is about sexual assault and abuse, but it is still a comedy. And I understand why people just wouldn't even want to entertain the thought of seeing something like this. But I feel like the way Fennell did the storytelling really makes it work. Like for example, there's the early 2000s movie Teeth, which makes every new assault part of the punchline, and the joke is literally the fact that this character is being assaulted. Whereas in Promising Young Woman, the joke isn't that sexual assault happens, the joke is that these men who perpetrate these things are really deluded and they truly believe that they're the good guys in the situation. And the joke is all part of just making fun of them and laughing at them and not at the harm that they've caused. I feel like that's an important distinction to make, and the fact that we have so many more examples of movies and TV shows often written by men who do the opposite is really sad. And so it's kind of refreshing to have Promising Young Woman be that one movie within the space, within the topic, that says, okay, we can make a comedy out of this, but we're not going to make it at the expense of the pain of the female characters involved. How much more emphasis we put as a society on the people who perpetrate these crimes. Like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, they get TV shows, specials, movies constantly, and yet their victims and their survivors, they don't get nearly any as much stories told about them. And even when they are somewhat on Netflix, as they had with Zac Efron, it was still very framed in a romantic sense and focused way more on the character of Bundy than I think it did on any of the people who were very negatively impacted by his life and his actions. So having Cassie be the main protagonist and following her story was really refreshing, but still the fact that she does die in the end and then we're just left to follow the rest of the not great characters is kind of sad. And my last complaint about this movie is the fact that Nina is never seen and is never given a voice within the film, even though all the events are spurred by what happened to her. And there's been a long-standing tradition when it comes to sexual assault survivors to have them treated, I guess, as women, that the most noble thing that they can do after being assaulted is to die or disappear, and sometimes both. And this movie did make Nina disappear, and then you find out close to the end that in fact she did die sometime after the events that happened. And that's just really sad, and in no way am I thinking that this is what Fennell was thinking of when she was writing this or working on it. And like these ideas have gone back down from like ancient Greek and Bible times. You see so many examples of it. And I just feel like that's something that just needs something that's worth mentioning as a trope, very old and very much worth letting go. Sexual assault survivors are out there doing awesome things, living their lives, and they're telling their own stories, and I feel like it's just all the more important to be elevating those more so than the stories of the people who did the horrible things. I think it's important for people to realize that your life doesn't end after surviving a traumatic event. It goes on, and what you do with it matters, and how that's interpreted on screen and how it sometimes is very often not interpreted on screen can sometimes be really damaging and kind of deflative for people who are maybe still on that journey of surviving. I think the stories of survivors are really awesome and worth telling, and it's worth noting that, yeah, a traumatic event will change your life, make it pivot, go in directions that you weren't expecting, but it doesn't mean that your opportunities to experience joy now and even more in the future are in any way diminished. And in case you are on that journey of survivorship, I just want you to know that your presence matters, and it won't always feel this way. Internet hug. Actually, let me insert the internet hugs from this YouTuber I've been watching recently. She calls people potatoes, which I don't know how I feel about that, but otherwise she seems really lovely. So thank you for watching my lengthy character study of Cassie from Promising Young Woman. Have you seen the film? What do you think? And what do you think about my analysis and my obsession with the framing and the fashion? By the way, all the nail colors right here are from Pear Nova. Not sponsored. I just really love them, and I care about kind of things that are like organic and natural, and the fact that all their nail polish is 3-free, non-toxic, and vegan is just super awesome. It's hard to find those things within a good price range. So let me just put Pear Nova on. This was a bit of a heavier review just because of the topic of the movie, so I'll leave some playlists in the down description if you're wanting to go watch some of my favorite funny videos and, you know, just waste more time on YouTube. You can check out my last video, which I thought was pretty funny. It's about funerals, but, you know, if that's your thing, it's my thing, clearly. I think it was pretty funny. If you follow me on my socials, please send me memes and reaction videos. I love to see it. Until next time, remember, consent is sexy. Bye!
All men should stay out of women business.